Why is it that no matter what champions meeting it is, be it sprint, mile, long or mediums, the same players always seem to be there, always making the finals, always finding a way to win? For the longest time, I thought it was because maybe I was just unlucky, maybe they spent more money, maybe they had every support card, and maybe they just rolled better RNG. But after hundreds of hours and hundreds of training runs and more failed champions meetings than I'd like to admit, I realised something. Winning players don't just build better Umas, they think differently. And the funny thing is, you might already be thinking like one without even realising it. I want to start with a question. How many times have you lost a CM and immediately blamed RNG? Maybe your skills didn't activate, maybe you got boxed in, or just maybe another girl I rolled. We've all been there, but here's something I want you to think about. The players who consistently win also experience all of those things. They're also unlucky and they also lose finals. And that's not including the amount of bad Umas that they've trained, or even through training runs away if things didn't go their way. So what makes them different? It can't be talent, and I don't think it's luck, and I certainly don't think it's because they spent more money than me. I think it's because somewhere along the way they stopped thinking like people trying to win one race, but changed their thinking to try and win every champions meeting. And that's what this video is all about. These aren't 6 tips, they're 6 signs. 6 moments where your mindset changes, and 6 moments where you stop thinking like the average player and start thinking like someone who consistently reaches the finals. So I want you to keep score, and as we go through them, count how many of these signs you've already recognized in yourself, and by the end of the video you'll have a pretty good idea how close you really are. But let's start with the first sign. Let me ask you something. Which Uma is the most important girl you'll ever build? Most players would point at this one, the girl that's going into champions meeting, the one with all the stats and all the goal skills and all the shiny inheritance. But I don't think that's right. I think it's these two. This is one of the biggest mindset traps in the game, that believing your ace is where races are won. And of course it makes sense. That's the girl everyone sees. It's the one crossing the finish line. And it's the one that ultimately wins you the title. So obviously, that's where most players spend almost all of their time. They start building an ace, then another, and another, hoping that this one will finally be the girl that wins it all. But here's the problem. Every one of those Umas starts from the exact same foundation. So if the foundation never improves, why would the outcome? Players eventually come to a single realization, and that is your ace doesn't exist in isolation. It's standing on the shoulders of every character that came before it, and every parent you build makes the next generation just a little bit stronger. You start with better affinity, which in turn gives you a better inheritance. Then we start seeing better sparks and even different unique skills that everyone else is running. And with all of that, it improves your chances of finding the build you actually want. It's almost identical to real horse racing. Champions aren't born, they're bred. And Umamusume captures this brilliantly. This is why some competitive players spend days, even weeks, building parents before they even think of building their final ace. They're chasing 9-star speed, stamina or power, because these are the stats that will help you across the finish line. They're not simply just inheriting any skills. They're choosing the runs that solve this race's specific problem. Maybe it's a key acceleration, maybe it's a mid-race skill, or maybe it's a unique that's impossible to fit in any other way. Like trying to fit in original Marizensky's unique on Summer Marizensky. And here's something I think some players often overlook. They're not just building one set of parents, they build parents for the specific CM. If we're running a mile, a long or a dirt, there are new parents being made constantly to try and solve the race. And sometimes this even means different parents for different tracks of the same distance. So if you've reached a point where you're spending more time building parents than building your final ace, that's a sign, because you've stopped thinking about winning one champions meeting. You're building an account that can win again and again and again. But even perfect parents don't guarantee victories. In fact, I've seen players build incredible parents and still lose because they skip the next sign. And once you notice it, you'll never look at champions meetings the same way again. Let me ask you another question. When a new CM gets announced, what's the very first thing you do? Do you check your support cards and see what you have available? Do you look at tier lists to see who the best girl for this race is? Or do you start training immediately, trying to get the perfect ace done as quickly as possible? If you do any of those things, you're doing exactly what I used to do. And that's why those incredible parents we talked about earlier still weren't enough, because parents don't tell you how to win. The track does. I think this is one of the biggest turning points almost every competitive player goes through. Some players will build an ace and then ask, can my girl win this race? Competitive players ask the opposite question. What kind of horse wins this race? And asking that different question changes almost everything. Before we even start racing, we already know what the track will look like. We'll know, is it turf or dirt? What distance is it? Is it left or right-handed? What are the race conditions? Is it sunny, raining, and what season? Are we racing in summer, spring, or winter? The track itself also lets us know if there's an uphill section and if the acceleration zone is on a final corner of a straight. We also need to know how much stamina is required to actually finish the race and what unique skills actually activate here. And by answering every one of those questions, it removes another bad decision before you've even started training. All of a sudden, those parents we built in the first sign start to make a lot more sense. Maybe in this CM, Maruzensky's unique is actually quite usable. Maybe this is where Major Rodoba suddenly sees value as a parent. And for Christmas Ogre recap, maybe Agnes Tachyon could give us the inheritance we actually need. And now we're no longer building good parents, we're building the right parents. And the same thing happens when we start looking at our support decks. We stop asking what's the strongest card and start asking what problem is this particular support card solving? Do I need to put in a third speed card to hit max speed? Would a power card serve me better because I seem to be lacking it? Does this card give me a key skill that will allow me to win the race? Or is it just giving me bigger numbers? And once you start thinking like that, deck building stops feeling like copying the meta and starts to feel like you're solving a puzzle. One of my favourite things about Champions meetings is that the track keeps changing because it forces us to change. Players aren't successful because they've memorized one build. They're successful because they've learned how to adapt. And every new CM becomes a new question. Every race asks something completely different, and that's exactly why building generic Umas eventually hits its ceiling, as players don't train for just any Champions meeting, they train for this Champions meeting, and that's a huge difference. So if you've ever looked at a track before looking at anything else, that's another sign, because you're no longer asking what can I build with my account, you're asking what does this race demand of me, and that's the moment preparation starts replacing hope. Once we know what the track looks like, we go and build 3 amazing horses, and on paper they all look incredible, but a CM is not run by 3 amazing Umas, it's run by 3 Umas that believe in the same plan. And I think that is one of the biggest mindset shifts a player can make. If someone had asked you, what's your strategy for the next CM? Would your answer be, I'm running vodka, or I'm running Christmas Ogre recap, or even I'm running Rice Shower? Or would you describe how your team wins? Because that is something completely different. Most of us will build 3 individually powerful Umas, maybe one front, maybe one pace, a late surger, or an encloser. 3 completely different builds with 3 very different ideas, and then hope one of them wins. But hope, unfortunately, isn't a strategy. Let's take running triple front runners as an example. On the surface, it simply looks like you've just picked 3 front runners, but that's not what you're actually doing. You're increasing the chance that one of your runners escapes, giving everyone behind her simply too much to do. And you're now forcing the race to play on your terms rather than someone else's. These 3 frontrunners aren't competing with each other, they're helping each other. Running double debuffers with a single ace also works exactly the same way. At first glance, it seems like you're only trying to win the race with one girl, but in reality, every member of the team has a job. As the debuffers look to weaken the opposition, they can also control positioning, denying your opponents of key positional skills that could help them win the race. A completely different strategy, but has the same principle. 3 girls, 1 idea. Outside of the races where a double debuffer and a single ace are strong, I don't think this is something that gets talked about enough. Winning a CM isn't always about making your girls stronger. Sometimes it's about creating the exact race you want to run. And once you understand that, you stop seeing your team as 3 separate entities and you start seeing them as one winning machine. So if you've stopped building aces to run against each other and start pulling towards the same goal, that's another sign, because you're now building a winning strategy. By this point, you've made your parents and you've studied the track, and now you're building a team with a single purpose in mind. So you're probably feeling pretty confident, but there's a catch. None of this actually matters if your account isn't ready when the right banner drops, because the players who consistently win often start preparing months before the race was even announced, and that's where the next sign begins. Have you ever opened the game to see the new banner has dropped, looked at the new featured support card and immediately thought, I need this card? Because I know I have. And I'm pretty certain almost every player has done this at some point. But eventually something shifts and you stop looking at the banner and you start looking at your account. And I think this is where a lot of players are the makers of their own downfall. They plan one banner at a time. Maybe it's for the character or even a support card, and may do this every time a banner drops. The problem with this is Champions Meeting isn't played one banner at a time. It's played over weeks and sometimes even months. Every carrot you spend here is a carrot you can't spend later. Every selector you use is one you won't have for the next game-changing support card, and every limit break crystal has an opportunity cost attached to it. This is where the shift happens, as some players stop asking, is this banner good? And start thinking, what does my account actually need? Let's take Marizensky Speed as an example. We were told for the longest time that she works perfectly fine at LB1. So when her banner dropped, why spend the carrots to get her at LB1 there when an easier option already existed? Simply use the selector we got for Grand Live and then use a limit break crystal, essentially saving your carrots for the next piece of the puzzle. This will also occur when we reach Grandmasters, especially with Ancestors and Guides. At first glance, some players may feel that they'll just borrow the card throughout the entirety of the scenario, but that's not why experienced players want it. You pull for this card because it now frees an entire support slot, allowing you to specialize your deck even further. And suddenly, you're not replacing one card, you're changing how every future deck is built, which is why we always pull with a purpose. Some of the strongest accounts in the game aren't built simply because someone got lucky. They're built because of small decisions that pointed in the same direction. Skip one banner to invest in another. Use a selector to save a crystal. This means that you build around your long-term goal instead of excitement today. Every one of these decisions feels small on its own, but give it some time. This is what will separate the players from the runs that are simply reacting to what's available on banner to the players that are ready for almost anything the game has to throw at them. So if you've ever looked at a banner and decided not to pull, not because it was bad, but because your account needed something else later, that's another sign, because you're no longer collecting powerful cards. You're building a powerful account. But here's the funny thing about everything that we've covered so far. Even if you build the perfect account and have planned every banner, maybe you saved every selector and made every smart decision that you possibly can make. With all of that, you can still lose. Not because your account wasn't strong enough, but because you accepted a girl that wasn't up to the task. Which one of these Umas wins a CM? Honestly, maybe both. Maybe they both lose as well. But that's not the point. The real question is, which one would you spend your entry on? This is one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn in my time playing Umamusume. Because we've all been here, spent an hour, maybe 2, maybe even more, training a girl. You've finally reached URA finals. The stats aren't perfect. The skills are alright. Maybe you're missing 1 gold from the cards, and maybe even your stamina has come out a little bit low. You're not happy, but your brain says something incredibly dangerous. I've already invested this much time. So what do? You keep it. Competitive players, however, don't think like that. They ask a much harder question. Would I actually trust this girl to win me a CM? And if the answer is no, they simply just go again. And all in all, the Uma might not even be that bad, but they already know what greatness looks like. By all means, this does not mean perfection, as I don't think anyone can ever build the perfect Uma every time. But sometimes you compromise. You take the white skill instead of the gold. Sometimes a single circle is enough so that you can buy more skills later. And sometimes you may even be missing a little bit of power or wit or stamina. But the stars have aligned and have given you the one final and best ever Uma that you have produced. Those are smart compromises. They're choices that you've actively made during the run. Settling is different. We've all seen it. A sprint or a mile Uma that's got a gold recovery, not having any acceleration, hell, even having no mid-race, or simply having the wrong inheritance, like having Major Orion's unique on a pace chaser. There's no real win condition. Those are not compromises. Those are the reasons you'll lose the race before they even begun. One thing you'll notice about some players is they fail far more training runs than everyone else. Not because they're unlucky, but because their standards are higher. They're not trying to build a runner that can win. They're trying to build an Uma that will win. There's a huge difference there. So the first time you've ever completed a run and thought, I can do better, this is not her final form, that's another sign. Because you've stopped asking, is this good enough? And you've started asking, is this worthy of this CM? And the moment your standards rise, your results will eventually follow. So we've built the parents, we've studied the track again, and we've built a team with a clear purpose in mind. And we've now planned our resources months in advance. And we're refusing to take average Umas into these races. By now, you probably look a lot like the players who keep reaching the finals, but there's still one sign left. And honestly, I think it's the most important one in the entire video, because it isn't about the game anymore, it's about the reason we keep coming back. Honestly, I think we've all forgotten what Umamusume has been trying to teach us this entire time. Every single one of these girls has lost. Some of them have even lost the biggest race of their lives. Some of them have watched someone else achieve the dream that they wanted, and some of them have crossed the finish line wondering, am I ever going to be good enough? They cry, they get frustrated, and even question themselves to the point where they even want to give up. But they don't. They pull themselves together, they recover, they train again, they believe and find new hope, and after all of that, they eventually run again. And at the end of the day, isn't that exactly what we do? We spend hours building parents. We finally create an ace worthy of running in a CM, and when it arrives, queue up, lose. Maybe we finish second. Hell, even sometimes we don't even make it to Group A finals. Maybe our skills never activate, or maybe we simply chose the wrong character. It hurts. Of course it does. We invested our time, our effort, and we wanted this one to be different from the others. But here's the difference. Some players see a loss and ask, why did this happen to me? Others ask a different question, and that is, what is this race trying to teach me? Did I need more speed? Did I need better parents? Could I have used a different inheritance? Maybe gone with a different team strategy? Put in a different support card to round out the skills or the stats? Every loss becomes another lesson, and every champions meeting becomes another step forward. So think about every sign: building better parents, learning the track, having one strategy and one focus, planning your resources, and refusing to settle for mediocrity. None of these things happen overnight. They're built one decision at a time and one CM at a time, learning lessons at every opportunity. That's how winners made. And here's the final sign. It isn't that you've stopped losing, it's that you've stopped letting losing define you. Because somewhere along the way, you've realized every race, every parent, and every failed training run makes you a better trainer. And now you've stopped trying to avoid failure and you've started to use it. Our favorite girls never stopped running. No matter how hard the race was or how heartbreaking the defeat felt, they always found a reason to step back onto the track. But why should their trainers be any different? At the start of the video, I asked why some players seem to always make the CM finals. Now I think we know the answer. It isn't because they spend the most money, and it isn't because they own every support card. It isn't because they're luckier than everyone else. It's because they've built habits over time, and these habits that slowly changed the way they thought about the game. They never stopped building characters to make better parents for their aces. They studied the track before the race even began. They stopped building 3 individual girls and started focusing on one winning strategy. They stopped pulling because they were excited for what was on banner and started investing with a purpose. And finally, they stopped accepting average and started chasing excellence. And that all led to them not fearing defeat, because every loss was simply preparing them for their next victory. So how many signs did you recognize? 1 or 2? Maybe even all 6? Whatever your answer was, remember this: every CM winner once stood exactly where you are now, wondering if they were ever going to get there, and even if they were good enough to be there, and if the next training run would finally be the one to give them their true ace. They didn't start the game as champion meeting winners, they became them, one parent, one race, and one setback at a time. So if you've started recognizing these signs in yourself, just keep going, because one day you'll load into another CM and you'll watch your team cross the finish line. You'll realize something: it was never one perfect character or one lucky race. It was never an overpowered support card. It was every decision that you made along the way, and every lesson that you learned, every time you chose to get back up and keep running. If you're looking for ways in which to improve your parent making, there's a video on the channel that shows you how to improve independent training. And if you're looking to plan ahead for the characters and support cards, there's also a video for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the finish line.